Good morning. Good morning. I hope you brought your cup of coffee with you or tea or whatever else that you like to drink. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Brian's got his. I'm Carol Henderson and I have Life by Design. And my whole reason for doing these podcasts is to help you to live a better life. And I'm here with my co-host, Barbara Ellison.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays. I'm Barbara Ellison. I'm founder of the Wellness Playroom because wellness is about so much more than just not being sick. It's about have wellness in your relationships, wellness in your physical body, but also wellness in your wealth. And I am so excited to introduce you to Brian Baird, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Lots of times has wellness people and has entrepreneurs to have healthy visibility, to get how to get your message out there in an authentic way that you feel that you are making a difference in the world and not just selling a product. So because so often heart-centered entrepreneurs get caught up in, but I don't want to sound like I'm selling something. So and Brian is an expert in communication and of just doing exactly that. So I just think this is going to be a great conversation, and leave some comments. And if you have any questions, let us know. So Brian, how are you doing today?
I thought it was funny as you're talking about health. I'm sitting here coughing in the background. So, but I ate a little something. It's like been tickling my throat. I'm probably a little sensitive to whatever it was, and so anyway, hopefully
we'll forgive you.
We need to talk.
When you guys are yapping, I will go in the background and cough without the microphone on. So.
Been known to do that.
So Brian, tell us about you. And
tell us
because I love your background, the effective way doing business at the speed of heart.
Okay,
and
so let me
that just sums up.
This is where I should brag. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, absolutely. We love to have you brag.
So, well, I'll just say I like to tell people about two things because it draws attention to the character of my work, and maybe it gives people insight into how I serve. And I am a 50-year, as of this summer, 50-year entrepreneur, maybe a bit more, because I was talking to somebody recently and let's go, oh, I did that lemonade stand thing. So I learned a lot from that one, by the way, but we'll talk about that maybe if we'll see. But the other thing is I'm a hypnotherapist. So I use both to guide people to extraordinary journeys, and it could be personal or professional. And it could be leadership in business or ownership in business, or somebody who's an entrepreneur, or somebody who's what may be popularly called a solopreneur. And I've had the luxury of making a ton of mistakes so other people don't have to do them.
Exactly.
Thank you for making those mistakes.
You're welcome.
And we have all done that. I was talking to a friend of mine just a little while ago, and we were just talking about some of the things that we've done and went, oh, brother, yeah, we did that. Where one of the things we were talking about is sometimes you'll make a connection with people, and it's like, and then you'll get like, I have been known to do it, don't do it anymore, but like just, oh, I'm great to connect with you, and then say, hey, would you be interested in doing my course? Well, I don't know you. And
right.
The no, like, and trust factor isn't there. And it's like asking you to marry me. I mean, like with me, one of the things that I do is I send people birthday. I love to celebrate. That's one of the things that I have now learned about myself. I like to celebrate with people. So I send people birthday messages. And then when they send back, gee, thanks, Barb. And I'll just have a conversation with them to see if we have anything in common. But it's like, you can't say, well, happy birthday, and gee, would you like to get married and enjoy my course?
Right. And I know
and
if
yet
you want to,
people do it all the time.
Well, and it's a natural thing because we have a personal sense of urgency around things like helping
Oh, he's frozen.
Yeah.
But he gets the message
Oh,
that
there
we're
it is.
sharing, that everybody gets these things. And one of the things that's most profound about that is, I got a signal error. I don't know if you can see it or feel it, but I got something going on here.
Yeah, you froze for a second.
Yeah,
That's all right.
yep. I apologize in advance, people. My network provider has been providing me crappy service for the last 4 days, and they admitted they have a problem, and they are working to resolve it. And they said inside of 3 weeks, which does not comfort me with all the stuff I got to do online. So anyway, I was saying is that we have a tendency to create urgency around the things that we want to share and support other people with, and then inside of that, sometimes we also have that sense of I need the transaction type of thing, because it's possible that we can say, if I can get that one sale today, I make certain numbers, or if I get that one sale today, then that will, they will love me faster, or whatever the case may be. And the challenge being here is, as you were saying, Barbara, is this using the know, like, and trust comment, is that that we haven't built the relationship yet in order to invite them to do these kinds of things. And what I've noticed, and especially in myself, is when I rush these things, it's not about them, it's about me. And that's what they feel. So we have to take the urgency off the table. We have to check our ego at the door. And then we can have the opportunity, or get the opportunity, to have an outstanding relationship with the person who's before us right now.
Right. Yeah. And just absolutely in present time.
Right.
Just to have a conversation. That's that's one of the things that I really work on, is that it's just a conversation. And I'm going to brag for 1 second. I have gotten better at doing it. I tend to be a little cut and dried. Well, because that's the kind of family I was brought up in. And I had to learn we always called it foo-foo. Oh, you're doing that foo-foo stuff. Well, sometimes people need that foo-foo.
Right.
They don't like to have the right now. So
yeah, there are some people who need you to be direct.
Yes.
But they're a very small number of people, actually. And they're a very small number of people. So so I would say what you've been calling the foo-foo is actually just love.
You're right. Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with love.
Right. Yeah. In fact, right now I'm reading a book from Steve Farber, and it's called Love is Damn Good Business. Love what you do in the service of people who love what you do.
I love that line.
That's a very good line.
So you'll get these gems out of Steve Farber and even Malcolm and these other authors that are out there that do, and not all of them are just strictly about business. Like when Malcolm Gladwell was writing the book The Tipping Point, it was more of a philosophy about human condition than it was about marketing. But everybody and his brother took it as a marketing book. So so there's you read books. Elon Musk, for all his possible peccadillos that we see, and all of his extraordinary things he keeps trying to, keeps working on and getting accomplished, the guy somehow or other cranks out reading about 9 books a week.
Wow.
I'm lucky right now if I get 9 books a year.
Yeah. Just because of the read a lot, and I don't anymore, and I blame it on the glasses. But
well, go audio.
I keep thinking that I should take a speed reading class, because one of the things that I like to do is I like to get the audio of a book and then have it in print in front of me, but turn up the speed. So I'll listen to it at 1.5, but I'm also reading it at the same time. So that has helped immensely.
Well, I think there's a lot of power in that. It's reinforcing 2 of our learning paths in the same instant.
Yes.
Yeah. And it just makes life interesting. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm listening to a book, but I'm reading it. So I'm reading it and listening to it at the same time. Yeah,
I'm gonna try that, Barbara. Maybe I'll get more than 9 books a year done.
I do that quite often. It's like, ooh, because I can pause, go back and then read it, and I can read it and then go back and pause and then listen to it again. and just because sometimes like lots of different books have nuances in them. It's like, ooh, what? And stop, go back, read, listen, and go, oh, and that helps me to interpret what is being said so that it lands better. That if
Okay.
it's something that's profound, lots of times you can read books and they don't land on you. The information doesn't land.
Well,
And all of a sudden it's like,
you learn where you are.
and you learn.
So you
where
may not be ready to receive something that's being
that,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and that leads to what I was just came to mind is Keith and I read a book in 93, 95 when it came out. And it's a Rick Joyner book, and it's an allegory, but it's real. And anyway, it was very good. Got lots out of it. It's a trilogy. But then my Bible study recently picked up this book, and our leader got the Audible version, and the man that reads it is amazing. And we're reading it and doing like Barbara was saying, this is the first time I'd ever really done that, but there's just so much more. And because it's been 15 years since, 12 years, whatever, it's been a little while since I read it. And it's like I see it from a whole different aspect reading it, but even the reading of it adds another layer. And the person reading it is an excellent reader and changes voices and stuff. But it adds another layer into what you take away from it.
Right. Yeah.
I've gotten a couple of books lately that I've got on Audible to listen when I'm in the car. I learned a hard lesson the other day that they need to be downloaded into your phone. But
yes.
But yeah. So The Traveler's Gift is one that we were
love that book
to, and Keith was really struggling. We haven't gotten into the good stuff yet because he struggled through the part of how bad his life got. He struggled with that. But anyway, so
yeah, and books are just, to me, books are my friends. And so I've always been a big reader. I've always been a reader. So, but some of them is like, okay, I'm not. Why am I reading this?
Right.
So, what's your favorite book of all times, Brian?
Oh gosh. That is a loaded question because I've been all over the place with. I mean, as a kid, I was reading science fiction over and over, like volumes and volumes of it. In fact, I got into trouble for reading into the wee hours in the morning as a kid. My mother would come in fact, catch me with a flashlight, reading under the covers.
Me too.
It'd be like 2 a.m. and she's going, "What are you doing?" But I just read all the time as a kid. And as I've gotten older, read less and less and less. And I think you can claim some of that's busyness and I should say that the technology has shifted underneath us in some ways. And so it's very much more visual and auditory. We have online and YouTube and then also Audible for books and things like that. So anyway, going back to what is my favorite book of all time, huh? Oh gosh. I haven't talked about it for years. As a teenager, this was my favorite book, which was written by Robert Heinlein. It was called Stranger in a Strange Land. And the reason why it struck me so powerfully is it talked about the fine line between religion and cult, and the concept of love versus fear, and knowledge of a heart-based kind. It was probably an early insertion of into the calculus of my journey that registered at an unconscious level. Because for many years I was all about the certainty of science, and I won't say I was a-religious, but I had reasons not to be. I had a lot of things that happened in my early religious years that made it so that I shifted away from organized religion and it turned me into my later years focusing on the ideas is that there is a universality in unconditional love, and that's where I spend my energy person, how I get so much success in guiding people too, whether they're religious or not. There's so many people who walk on in a conditional frame because of all the fears that are attached to the idea is releasing them from their fears. And this book, Stranger in a Strange Land, dealt heavily with these subjects, and in a remarkable way that now when you ask me about it, I'm going, that may be one of the best books I read ever, just because of how it may have been influencing me today. Cough.
Cool. I always like to know what motivates people, what their start.
And I've read lots of stuff, that satire like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and nonfiction like stories about Benjamin Franklin,
right,
and Ulysses S. Grant, and
mm-hmm.
And the part about getting some well-researched materials, you get to hear about the challenging side of these people's journeys, not the popular stories we get to hear. So like we find out Abraham Lincoln, despite the fact that he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, he carried with him, he harbored some deep racism towards other people. So he was a flawed man, just like so many people, and so many huge accomplishments in the human history, and still wasn't perfect. So I like the idea is that we all can experience forms of redemption by virtue of becoming aware of our flaws and working on them.
Right. That's one of the things for me this week. Has a nurturing person and has a coach and stuff. And I'll be just totally upfront, is that once in a while we have trouble charging people of, charging what you're worth, and charging, because, who's going to pay me to, to do whatever it is that you're doing. And so this week, that's one of the things that I've been working on. And it was like, wonder where that came from. And, so much. And then, so after the session that I did, it was like, we were talking about so much of the stuff that we know as adults came from when we were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old.
Oh yeah.
And whoa, like I can remember my parents. I mean, you didn't talk about money, or it was like, what do you mean you want to spend money on that?
Right.
And there wasn't there, it was just such a weird thing. And a friend of mine, she teaches a course called Me, Myself, and Money. And that's what she deals with people. She said, you wouldn't believe how many people have this money story that they just either can't spend money, they can't make money, or they hoard money, or it's like, she said, there's the whole gamut around money. And yet money, it's a tool. We have to have it in our lives because every one of us has bills to pay.
Well, you guys have bills?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And that's what she said. It's like, it was just the funniest thing. And sometimes you just kind of go, oh, well, now where did this come from?
Well, it's like, doing the work that I've been doing for so many years now, is like the underlying issue is always an element of fear. It could be deep fear, like a phobia. It could be just some sort of button installed by parents or teachers, or maybe even peers. And you had pointed out validly, there's so much of the bulk of this stuff gets installed in us before we're 7 years old.
Right.
And part of that's because in the first few years of our lives, we operate in a hypnotic state, so to speak. When we were very young, we operate, that's why we're such sponges when we were like 4, 5, 6 years old. We could learn everything about dinosaurs in 2 days, that kind of thing. You talk to these little kids and they know everything. They know stuff that we go, how did you learn that? I was just here the other day. You didn't even, that's because they're sponges. And, they also pick up on all the environmental cues.
Right.
So they know about the troubled relationships in the household. They know about, parents think they're hiding this stuff, and it doesn't happen because they're sponges. they can pick it all up. They may not completely know what it is. They just know something that, and they store it off. And these things come back, and it gets even more challenging because sometimes you're talking about things that might be coming from things the parents say, but sometimes it comes from epigenetic changes. Like if I was a Holocaust survivor, my genes changed. I have switches there are proteins happening at the cellular level, and my genes changed during my experience as a victim, if you want to use that word, of the Holocaust. So when I have children, they get those gene changes, and their idea is that there are these little protein switches that are inside of our gene structure. Some are meant to be on, some are meant to be off. And sometimes the ones that are supposed to be off get turned on, and the ones that are supposed to be on get turned off because of stressors and other factors that take place in our life. So I could actually have a gene that's supposed to be tied to happy emotions get flipped off because I lived in these extreme circumstances like the Holocaust. I'm just picking that one. Could maybe children of slavery or whatever the case may be, right? So, so because my genes have changed and I may not have healed, because there is room to reverse epigenetic changing, I can now pass that along genetically to my children who could be born depressed, be born with buttons installed in them that were not messages during their living years, but it happened before, even as they were conceived. So there are lots of things that when we talk about people just using the money part of the equation, is there are people who have complex relationships with money and have no idea where they came from, because they could have been generational, they could have been genetic, they could have been parentally installed, teacher installed, maybe peers. Patterns that show up in our lives could create certain kinds of behavioral buttons, and that almost all have a fear-based component to them. So if we get a chance to explore in our journeys, when I was using the word flaws before, I really think that's a lower energy word. I really like to look at the ideas is that they are elements for learning.
Right.
That when things show up for us that are not seemingly positive, and we may not even be conscious of the things we're afraid of. We just know, can't do that. No, I'm afraid. And they might even say those words. They just can't do that because it doesn't feel right.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a loving evaluation. And that's where I really try to guide people is when you evaluate a choice in your life, what is the loving choice versus the fear-based choice? I will venture a bet that 99%, if not 100%, of all choices you make that are fear-based, unless it's acute fear from somebody coming at you with something where they're going to hurt you right now, then any choices you make are likely not to end well, or end in regret, or end in you're being stuck, or whatever the case may be. So I mean, you're not moving forward. Any decision you make with love will be what frees you up and allows you to move forward. So it gives you these really huge opportunities is when you see something that shows up and you make that question in your decision-making process. Am I doing this because I love myself, or I love the other people around me, or I'm just doing this as a thriving type thing? Or am I doing it as fear-based and contraction-based? And if I'm doing the latter of those two, then I really should be taking a good look at what messages are coming up through my system, my body, so that I can learn to free myself from those things and move forward and thrive. And you think about the work that we all do. When you folks are serving people with solutions for their health and wealth, and you get the no, sometimes it's about money, sometimes about they don't know you enough yet, or they don't trust you, or they don't trust, and frankly, it's not you. It shouldn't be taken personally. Most of the time when people trust is they just don't trust anybody. So you're just another opportunist. And although there are things we can do to trip over that opportunity signal, which makes them go, oh, they just want something for them. Like, as we were saying before, is if you rush a transaction or you rush an invitation or something like that, it's no longer about them, it's about you. And they will smell that, and that will reinforce everything they've always believed is that they can't trust you. And now you just showed up with something else to make sure they can't trust you. So
wow.
So there's so much to do. I think we were going to talk about visibility, but in some ways we are talking about visibility. aren't we?
Well, we are, because people have to realize that like for me, when I realize that people don't know, you don't know what you don't know until someone else tells you something that you don't know.
Mhm.
And that's what I think is so important about with us, especially those of us that do have a message to get out there, that there are people out there that don't know what we know.
Mhm.
And if we
Yeah.
don't tell them,
Right.
then we've done them a disservice.
And you know what? I think we may have discussed this offline, but one of the questions, or maybe I think you did as a kind of an intro to what we were talking about here today with this live conversation, is how do we share our story without it being about bragging?
Right.
Because bragging is kind of an egocentric type thing. Now, there are reasons why people do brag. It makes them feel better about themselves or whatever. And that's a very complex scenario when people are maybe nurturing their ego, or they're fragile, they're feeling self-worth issues, or whatever the case may be. And I'm not suggesting that's where we are when we do this thing that may appear as bragging. Sometimes what we're trying to do is make sure that we were cementing the value of our story by saying, I've done all this stuff. I've had this really maybe even bizarre journey, or whatever the case may be. Like, if I've not even shared with you guys the long view of my journey. And if I did, you would go, that's not the guy I know. Because of how I started in my early years, based on the things I've been talking about. It's like, we do what we need to do to survive before we learn to thrive. And then you guys are coming along and saying, I've got something to help you thrive. You'll feel better. You'll sleep better. You'll have more energy. You'll look better. If I didn't already say that. And, and they're going to go, that's not my experience. So automatically you're offering something that's not consistent with their beliefs or their identity, or all these other things. So the question comes down to is, how can we serve? How can we serve without telling our story? And how do we tell our story in a way that is actually endearing and not gratifying, self-gratifying? So, it's an extraordinary question when you think about it. And the best thing I can always offer to people is, from my perspective, based on what you just said, the best thing I can offer people is tell your story from your heart, not from your head. Because when we tell it from our head, we are very likely talking to our ego, and they're probably smelling ego in the story. And if I'm telling the story from my heart, they're going to go, they get me, they understand me. And that's how we make the relationship connections we need in order to serve. We cannot serve without the relationship. We can't have the relationship without the connections. We can't have the connections without earning the trust. So we have to do it from our heart. That's the only thing that gels readily and meaningfully in people's story, in journeys. It's the only way to reach somebody who's already got all their defense shields up.
And I think that's part of it too, is that realizing that people do have defense shields. We all do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we have to learn when our own defense shields are up, because you can learn something from everybody you meet. I mean, no telling what it is, but you can learn something from everyone.
And don't despise children. Once in a while, I have to admit that my grandkids, once in a while, they'll come up with something and I will go like, oh, right. And I have to really stop and think about it and go, ooh, they're right. And and you can learn anything. It's just a matter of, for me, just being open to it and being open to all of the opportunities. Because you never know where where an opportunity is going to show up. In
my early years, I used to do a lot of things to please people, to serve people, but it was mostly a people pleasing thing. So in many ways, it was about feeding or nurturing an ego that needed extra massaging. As I've gotten in my more, my more executive years, if you want to call it that, is I don't operate in that place anymore. So my standing out in service is more like, how do I serve, as opposed to how do I please? And one of the things that was part of a shift for me is I worked with somebody who has actually written a book, and maybe we should figure out a way to get you guys connected. But the idea is there's a philosophy where being the one for anybody and everybody you make contact with.
Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy. And so by being the one, and it's not like I didn't already know this. It's just that she kind of created a formula around it. So it made it so it was more palpable in some ways when you weren't always practicing. It gave you an opportunity. But for me, it was really an extension of my philosophy, which is lean in on anybody and everybody on their journey. Find out what their story is, what their message is. You're going to get their wisdom. And as you pointed out, Carol, all walks of life, all energies. And as you point out, Barbara, even children, because everybody has something to say. And often the reason why I think it can be such beauty and everything's going on is I think it's divine. I think the wisdom that we pick up from other people, they may have learned it over their lifetime. It's still divinely introduced to me. Right. And so it turns out often I get to be the one that's improved by the connection. So they end up being the one for me. And that's the beauty of sort of leaning in on people's lives, because then you find out they're leaning in on your life in a very extraordinary way.
Well, in the Hebrew language, there is no word for coincidence. So we talk about coincidences. Oh, I just happened to run into, there are no coincidences in this world. Everything, every meeting, every connection is inspired. And so we need to look and think, okay, is this inspired good, inspired bad, and go with it there, because most of the people, most connections are inspired for the good and for our needs and for their needs, and it's a two-way street. And so that's one of the things that we need to remember, that it's not always for us to give, and it's not always for us to take, and most often it's both in the same conversation.
So things tend to be all directions, right? Like we're here to learn, we're here to teach. Usually it's both at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
We're here to love. Usually it's all directions, that kind of thing.
Yes. So how do people get a hold of you, Brian? How do they get a hold of you if they want to know more, if they want to reach out and glean more of your knowledge?
Oh, well, milliondollarfeeling.com is where I do a lot of personal and entrepreneurial type work as well. And if you guys are putting this up on something like Facebook or whatever, then I can share with you a link that make it easier for them to see all the work that I do.
Right. This will go on our Facebook pages for the Thoughtful Thursday that's on Mavens of Motivation. It will also go up on YouTube.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll go both places.
Okay, good. So I'll make sure that I provide you a link that covers $1 million feeling for those who don't want to go look, and then that's milliondollarfeeling.com. That's my hypnotherapy practice. But I love how my green shirt is making me disappear here.
Yeah, disappear. Well, and I didn't get the memo that we were supposed to be at the beach today. Right. I thought about that, and I thought I'm the only one not at the beach.
And you have a beach in your backyard.
I have a beach in my backyard.
Yeah. Although I'm going to tell Carol for just a second, just because it was so funny. She called me one day and she said, the fire planes are going over my house. And she could watch the fire planes because they were of the big fire in Texas. And she said, they swoop down over my house, skim the top of the lake to pick up water, and then they're up again. And I went, really? She said, oh yeah, they've been doing it for 2 days.
Wow. I have pictures.
And she has pictures, and she sent them to me. It was like, oh my stars.
The video, you can watch them come up and then go up over and roar over.
Now, was it pictures and not video? Carol.
I had video and pictures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I did both. The really cool pictures someone else took of the planes down in the up closer to the dam, that actually all of them, and there were 3, and they'd take off and land together.
And just, they were skimming the top of the lake. And, just, we have no concept of things that go on. It's like, oh, wow. That's why it comes back to be open to all opportunities, because you never know what you're going to learn or see. Yes. Oh,
Well,
wow.
and there is a thing that is incorporated in some of my energy is just don't be so focused on the end result.
Yeah.
Be focused on how you're being in the journey towards that result, and be flexible, because you might get a new piece of information, divinely inspired or other, that makes it go, oh my gosh, that's the direction I'm supposed to be going. And then you go and you make that change. And it might even be what you had your goal with just has a new flavor, and it's now based on this new process, new journey, new direction.
Well, and our clients get to experience that every Thursday and every Monday, because we start out with a plan and a goal, and we go all kinds of places. But
but that's where the magic happens. That's where the magic happens.
It does.
I don't like structured. I mean, you have to have some. I mean, we talked about what we would talk about, but I love rabbit holes are good, because that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Love chasing those little bunnies. But anyway, Brian, thank you so much.
This was fun.
We will put things in the chat. Folks, like, share, tell your friends about this, and go check out his info.
Are you guys going to come on my video cast?
Absolutely.
One tonight, or
no, it's not tonight. I mean, we're going to be doing some other experience later tonight, but I'm saying, are you going to come on our video cast?
Yeah,
sure.
Send us an invite.
Well, I'm gonna send you the link and you guys schedule it. But so I will also just suggest that everybody who goes to when they look at my card that I share with you guys, that you share, is they go to my YouTube channel, check out all the video casts done so far, and then we get a chance to have them with you guys individually or together. I don't care how you guys want to do it. But these are great conversations, and we'll pick something even hopefully as good as this topic was.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
We accept your invitation. Absolutely.
Yes. We'll see y'all. Thank you
so much. Have a good one.
And thank you, Brian, for such a good video.